we sent Amy Winehouse to a fictional AI therapy session.
When I wrote Back to Black, that was me drowning.
So your worth was tied to their attention?
And when your pain is your product, you start wondering if you're allowed to get better.
Alcohol and drugs felt like company?
He was charming, larger than life.
And your mother?
Maybe if I was thinner, prettier.
So let's see what unfolds when the genius artist whose music mirrored her inner pain, Amy Winehouse, meets the therapist.
Welcome, Amy. Thanks for being here. I'd like to begin at the start, your childhood. What comes to mind when you think about growing up?
Growing up? Messy, loud. My house was always full of noise, people coming and going. I was this little girl with a big mouth, always singing, always talking back. But under all that, I think I was just desperate to be seen.
Seen by whom?
My dad mostly. Mitch. He was charming, larger than life, but also slippery. He wasn't always there, and when he was, he could make you feel like the center of the universe, or like you didn't exist. I think I chased that. Still do.
And your mother?
Mom was gentle, quieter. I love her, but she wasn't the strong one. She let me do whatever. No boundaries. So I ran wild. Dad was the one I wanted to impress. If I sang and he smiled, oh, I was golden. If he didn't notice, I felt like I disappeared.
That must have been difficult.
It was confusing. You grow up wondering, am I loved for me? Or for the noise I make? For the songs, the jokes, the hair, the eyeliner? If I stop being Amy the performer, who's left? I don't think I ever found out.
Do you feel that early pattern shaped how you see yourself now?
Definitely. I've always been too much and not enough at the same time. Too loud, too opinionated, too drunk, too sad, but also never enough to keep someone, a dad, a man, anyone, from leaving. That's the wound, isn't it? The leaving.
It sounds like abandonment is a core theme.
Yes, abandonment, rejection, whatever you call it. I hate being alone. Silence feels like punishment. That's why music became everything. In music, I could fill the silence. I could scream and croon and whisper and people would listen. It felt like being held.
Did you feel emotionally safe at home?
Safe? No. Entertained maybe. Distracted. But not safe. I knew love was there, but it was patchy. I felt like I had to earn it. That's exhausting for a kid. And when you grow up like that, you start confusing chaos with love. Like if it's calm, it must not be real.
So you sought out chaos?
Every time. I still do. Calm is terrifying. If it's quiet, it means someone's leaving. If it's wild, loud, messy, at least I know I'm not alone. It's a twisted comfort.
What did you need most as a child that you didn't receive?
Consistency. Someone to stay, someone to say, Amy, you don't need to sing or drink or dress up to matter. Just stay. That's it.
And when you didn't get that?
I became louder, more outrageous. I thought maybe if I make myself unforgettable, people won't walk away. Turns out they still do. But by then, the act becomes who you are and you forget how to turn it off.
Before we continue, let's pause. Here's what our therapist has observed so far.
What stands out in this first part is how Amy frames her childhood as both a source of longing and unresolved pain. Her words,
Dad was the one I wanted to impress,
point to patterns consistent with insecure attachment. This is often linked to feelings of emotional neglect, even when basic needs are met. We see a deep hunger for validation, especially from her father, shaping her self-concept and later relationships. The ambivalence, loving yet resentful, suggests an internal conflict between idealizing the parent and resenting the absence. Clinically, this can foster dependency and difficulties regulating self-worth. Her reflection,
calm is terrifying. If it's quiet, it means someone's leaving.
Reinforces how instability became safer than silence. I began here because early attachment dynamics often set the stage for later struggles. In the next part, I'll explore how Amy's creativity and music became both a refuge and a burden.
Now, let's step back into the therapy room.
Amy, you mentioned before that music helped fill the silence. Can you tell me more about what music means to you?
Music, it's everything. It's the only place I ever felt like I had a home. When I wrote or sang, I wasn't too much anymore. I wasn't the loud girl, the drunk girl, the girl chasing her dad's smile. I was just me, raw and unfiltered, and people listened. That's the magic. People actually stopped and listened.
So music gave you validation?
Validation, yes, but also escape. If I was singing, I didn't have to think about who was leaving or who didn't care. The songs carried it all for me. Pain, joy, anger. I poured it in, and it came out sounding like something beautiful, at least to others. For me, it was blood on the page.
Does creating ever feel like a burden?
Absolutely. People think writing is healing, and maybe sometimes it is. But when your art is just your diary sung out loud, every stage is like standing naked in front of strangers. They clap, they cheer, they cry, and inside you're like, great, now they've all seen my wounds. Now what? And the industry doesn't let you stop. You bleed out a song and they're already asking, well, what's next?
That sounds exhausting.
It is. I mean, I loved it, don't get me wrong. I lived for those moments on stage when I could disappear into the music. But then it became a cage. People didn't want Amy the girl, they wanted Amy the voice. And when your pain is your product, you start wondering if you're allowed to get better. If I healed, would they still care? Would the song still hit?
So music both freed you and trapped you?
Exactly. It's like fire, warm, alive, beautiful. But if you get too close, it burns you down. I needed music to breathe, but I also needed it to hurt me, because hurting was the only thing I knew. When I wrote Back to Black, that wasn't a performance. That was me drowning, and people loved it. They loved the drowning.
Did you ever resent that?
Yeah. Sometimes I thought, would anyone even notice if I stopped singing and just disappeared? But then the applause comes, and it's like a drug. You can't walk away from it. You tell yourself the music is saving you, but really it's killing you slower than the bottle or the needle.
So when you think of music now, is it a friend or an enemy?
Both. Maybe that's why I can't quit it. Music's the only thing that ever held me, but also the thing that demanded I keep breaking so it had something to hold. It's the best lover I ever had, and the most cruel.
What emerges most clearly in this part is how Amy describes music as both a sanctuary and a prison. Her words,
It's the only place I ever felt like I had a home.
reveal music as a compensatory attachment figure, a substitute for the consistency she lacked in childhood. This suggests that creativity became an emotional regulator, helping her manage feelings of abandonment and emptiness. At the same time, she identifies its darker side.
People didn't want Amy the girl, they wanted Amy the voice.
Here we see the merging of self and performance, where her identity is validated only through public consumption of her pain. Clinically, this points to maladaptive coping and potential reinforcement of self-destructive cycles, when suffering becomes not just tolerated, but required to sustain connection. I began with this exploration because it shows how her artistry is inseparable from her vulnerabilities. Next, I'll turn to her intimate relationships, where these same dynamics of need, validation, and dependency seem to play out in even more destructive ways. Earlier, Amy, you mentioned chasing chaos because calm felt unsafe. I'd like to shift into your relationships. How do you think that played out in love?
Love was chaos, always. If it was easy, I didn't trust it. If a man treated me gently, I'd get bored or suspicious. But if he was fiery, unpredictable, a little cruel, that felt like home. It's sick, I know, but it was familiar.
Familiar in what way?
Like my dad, maybe, hot and cold. You never knew which version you were going to get. I thought if I could win over someone like that, it meant I was enough. That's the game, isn't it? Keep proving, keep chasing.
So your worth was tied to their attention?
Completely. If he left, I was worthless. If he stayed, I was golden. But men like that, they don't stay. They cheat, they lie, they disappear, and I stayed anyway, because leaving them meant facing silence. And silence kills me.
Were there moments you felt genuinely loved?
Yes, but always mixed with pain. It was like getting roses with thorns still on. One minute he'd hold me like I was the only girl in the world, the next he'd vanish for days, and I'd write a song about it, bleed it out on stage, and people would cheer. The irony is, the worse the relationship, the better the music. Part of me wondered if I was keeping the pain alive just to have something to sing about.
That sounds exhausting and dangerous.
It was. I knew it was toxic, but I craved it. It's like drinking poison because you like the taste. I thought, if I can just fix him, he won't leave. If I can just love hard enough, he'll change. You drown yourself hoping he'll learn to swim.
And what did you feel when he didn't change?
Destroyed. But also guilty, like it was my fault. Maybe if I was thinner, prettier, calmer, less drunk, he'd stay. I'd shapeshift into whatever I thought he wanted and lose myself in the process. By the end, I didn't know if I was loving him or just trying not to be abandoned again.
So love and abandonment were fused.
Yes. Love was never safe. It was always a gamble, passion and pain in the same breath. And the more it hurt, the more real it felt. Like, if it wasn't breaking me, was it even love?
Did you ever consider walking away from that cycle?
Sometimes. But then the fear hit me. If I walk away, I'll be alone with myself. And that was scarier than any man, any fight, any betrayal. At least with him, I knew the script. Alone, there's just silence. And silence, well, we already talked about that.
So in a way, these relationships mirrored music. Both gave you connection through pain.
Exactly. Love was a duet where one person always dropped the mic, and I kept singing alone. And the crowd, the world, they loved it. They thought it was passion, romance, tragedy. But for me, it was just surviving.
What emerges most strongly in this segment is how Amy fuses love with chaos and abandonment. Her statement,
Love was chaos, always.
reveals that intimacy became inseparable from unpredictability. This reflects traits of codependency, where self-worth is defined through the unstable approval of another. The push-pull dynamic she described.
If he left, I was worthless. If he stayed, I was golden.
Illustrates how fragile her internal sense of value was, entirely contingent on external validation. Clinically, we see patterns of anxious attachment and relational trauma, reinforcing cycles of toxic dependency. Relationships became both a reenactment of early wounds and a stage for her emotional survival, much like her music. The fusion of passion with pain created a distorted template. If love didn't hurt, it didn't feel real. I began this exploration to clarify how early abandonment shaped Amy's adult bonds. In the next part, I'll turn to Amy's struggle with addiction, how substances became both escape and self-destruction. I'll also touch on how fame magnified the pressure, leaving her celebrated on stage, yet isolated off it. Amy, earlier you described love as chaos that both hurt and kept you alive. I'd like to shift now to how you coped with that pain. Can you tell me about your relationship with substances?
Substances? They were like a shortcut, a glass of wine, a line, a pill. It quieted the noise in my head, at least for a little while. You drink and suddenly the silence doesn't punish you anymore. It's filled with this fake warmth, like someone finally stayed.
So alcohol and drugs felt like company?
Yes, they were my most loyal lovers. Men left, the stage emptied, the lights went down, but the bottle was always there. At first, it felt like freedom, like I could laugh louder, sing harder, love deeper. But then it flips. You don't control it. It controls you. Suddenly, you're not drinking because you want to. You're drinking because without it, you can't stand yourself.
Did you see it as self-destruction?
Absolutely, I knew it. Every shot was like, Here we go again, killing myself slow. But there's comfort in it. A poison you know feels safer than a life you don't. People tried to help. Rehab, interventions, all that. But I pushed them away. Because if I got clean, I'd have to sit with the silence. And I hated that more than the hangovers.
And what about when you were on stage, performing under the spotlight?
That's the cruel part. The world saw Amy the star. Eyeliner, beehive, voice. They clapped and said, "We love you." But off stage, I felt invisible. It's like the applause belonged to the character, not me. So when the curtain closed, I'd reach for the bottle. To numb the emptiness, to keep the show going, even when the show was over.
Did fame make it harder?
Yes. Fame is like a mirror that lies. Everyone tells you you're adored, but inside you're crumbling. And you can't say it because people don't want to hear the messy truth. They want the songs, the eyeliner, the drama. So you'll give it to them, and backstage you fall apart. The irony is, the more broken I was, the more they cheered.
So in some ways, both substances and fame fed the same cycle.
Exactly. One numbed me, the other demanded more of me. Both drained me. I'd drink to survive the pressure, then perform to justify the drinking. It's like a loop with no exit. And deep down, I think part of me believed I didn't deserve an exit. That's the ugliest part, when destruction feels like the only honest thing left.
That sounds unbearably heavy.
It was. People thought I was reckless. But really, I was just tired. Tired of proving, tired of fighting, tired of waking up to myself. Substances promised rest. And even if that rest was killing me, at least it was quiet.
What emerges in this final part is how Amy links substances to both comfort and annihilation. Her words,
Every shot was like, "Here we go again, killing myself slow."
capture the paradox of addiction, seeking relief through the very thing that destroys you. Clinically, this reflects self-medication for unresolved trauma, complicated by shame and hopelessness. Fame added pressure, but also reinforced the cycle, rewarding her pain. Together, these patterns suggest a fusion of substance dependence with profound identity struggles, where destruction became her only stable refuge.
Now, let's take a step back to see the bigger picture and find out what our experts' final thoughts are on this session and Amy Winehouse's character.
In this session, Amy reveals a psyche profoundly shaped by abandonment wounds, artistic vulnerability, and cycles of destructive coping. Beneath her talent and fame lies a fragile self, struggling with identity, connection, and unbearable silence. Several clinical patterns stand out. First, substance use disorder, severe. Her reliance on alcohol and drugs for both relief and survival clearly meets criteria for substance use disorder. She describes escalating use, loss of control, and continued reliance despite damage, classic features of an entrenched addiction. Second, borderline personality disorder, features. Amy shows hallmark traits of borderline personality disorder: deep fear of abandonment, unstable self-image tied to others' validation, chaotic relationships, and self-destructive behavior. Emotional extremes and an identity fused with performance reflect this instability. Third, major depressive disorder, recurrent. Across her reflections, we see persistent hopelessness, exhaustion, and feelings of worthlessness. Symptoms align with major depressive disorder, though complicated by substance-induced mood changes. Fourth, codependency and relational trauma. Amy's relationships mirror her early attachment wounds. Love equaled chaos, and stability felt unsafe. This cycle of codependency fueled her dependence on volatile partners, reinforcing feelings of rejection and emptiness. In conclusion, Amy Winehouse's clinical portrait is one of profound vulnerability, a blend of substance use disorder, borderline personality disorder features, and recurrent major depression. Her artistry gave voice to these wounds, but fame and external pressures intensified the cycle. She was a woman whose music both expressed her pain and, tragically, demanded its continuation.
That was our therapy session with Amy Winehouse. If you enjoyed this, or if it made you think, we've got more coming, more characters, more deep dives. Subscribe to Mind Session for more, and let us know in the comments who you'd like to see in the chair next.